that. And assuming that I don't get feedback, I'm just going to go ahead and do a really quick introduction. And I'll just welcome everybody here. Thank you for joining us this evening. I haven't seen you in a while. It's been a while since we've had a meeting, and I'm really happy that you're here. Life is happening fast, right? We're in some very interesting times, but I'm thrilled to welcome Marty Lucas here. I'm just going to go ahead and do a really quick introduction. And I'll just, that's my YouTube. I have to. I have to mute that, and there it is. Okay. Take two. Okay, Marty. So Marty's one of the nation's leading radionics consultants, instructors, and researchers. In addition to his own classes, he's a regular guest instructor at many expos and conferences. You might have seen him if you're in that that world. He speaks at the annual Great Radionic Expo, the United States Psychotronic Association, and the American Society of Dowsers. I think you're going to be out here, Marty, in California in July for the West Coast Dowsers. Is that right?
I'm not going to be able to make it for that one.
Okay, I thought I saw your name.
Sorry.
Anyway, when he's not working in his lab, he's teaching or enjoying time with his family. He is on the tractor in his organic farm in Southeast Iowa. So where he is joining us from. So and I again. Okay. So here we are. Here we are. Thank you so much, Marty. We were talking a while ago about these times, about how the energy is shifting so quickly. And I love all of the work you're doing with radionics. Maybe I'm guessing most people that are here kind of understand a little bit about radionics, but before you start your actual presentation, could you just do a little refresher for people on what radionics is and how it's used?
Certainly. Yeah, for people that are energy workers or dowsers, think of radionics as a cousin of dowsing. So what energy workers do with their thought forms, they do with their the Reiki people do with their work, some of the other energy people, radionics people use instruments to do that same work. And it all goes back to that if there is something that exists, it has a frequency pattern. If it has a frequency pattern, we can capture that pattern, and then we can either decide to grow that pattern or suppress that pattern. And, in a nutshell, that's what radionics does. And so you can really get into the weeds if you like to and get into the details, or you can do from a much, higher perspective as well.
Excellent. That's a great summary. Thank you. So I'm gonna turn it over to you and let you talk to us about what we see and the perception we have and how to see magic.
All right. Well, let me go ahead and do the share screen.
Okay.
And hopefully.
I see it.
All right. All right. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to share with you some of my work. One of the things that got me into this was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Dan Scow. And Dr. Scow was a student of Carrie Reams. And one of the things that he stressed over and over again was we needed to see what we look at. And what he meant by that is that when you see something, don't just accept the surface explanation, spend a little bit of time thinking about it and try to understand what's really going on. And it's my belief that either this world has no magic in it whatsoever, or that it's all magic. And I believe in both of those scenarios, it has everything to do with we really don't understand what all the rules are. And if we understood the rules, we'd certainly be much more powerful than we currently are. And there we go. All right. Now, one of the things that I've got a number of friends in the different industry that I work with, and intuitive healers and energy workers of all flavors. And Dr. Rebecca Mincer, who is an extraordinarily gifted healer, she says that the belief in the treatment is just as important as the treatment itself. And it's my belief that if skeptics understood quantum science concept of the observer, they understand why their tests fail. See, the thing is, all of this magic that we deal with every day in our lives is explained with what the quantum scientists have been learning over the last 150 years. And that really is, I think, the primary thing. So when somebody comes up to you and they tell you that they just don't believe in what you're doing, uh, know that it's probably coming from a point of, well, they're still stuck in their high school science. So when you think about what you see, does that explanation make any sense? So for instance, with the placebo effect, sometimes when you go into the physician or the doctors will tell you, well, you know what, that's just the placebo effect, and it's not real. Well, if the placebo effect makes a change in the body's health, it isn't something that we want to ignore. It isn't something that we want to file away. It's something that we would like to try to figure out how to make it work every time. And I think that's one of the keys. When we find something in our life that doesn't fit into the pattern, that doesn't obey the rules that we've been taught to believe, what we do is we put it in a different file and then we hide that file away. The problem is that that file of all the things that don't fit into our rules are that same things that keep us from being empowered and keep us from stepping into, in my belief, who we really are and what we're really supposed to be doing while we're on this planet. One of the things that I like to think about, and I think we've all seen this. You've seen where there's a big excavation. Maybe they're going to be putting in a building or a housing development or whatever, and there's that mound of dirt. And then a few weeks later, there's a whole bunch of weeds covering that mound of dirt. Now, if you go to the agronomist, they'll tell you that the seeds were in that soil the whole time, and simply exposing them to the sun is what allows them to germinate. Okay. Well, let's take a look at that mound of dirt and mound of weeds. If you look, the weeds are oftentimes, almost all the same types of weeds. It's not a whole bunch of different weeds. There may only be 2 or 3 different weeds in that pile. And that soil that they disturbed, as they got past the topsoil and they got into the subsoil, they got into the clay, how long were those seeds supposedly waiting to germinate? Here in the Midwest, that whole layer of clay that we have underneath the topsoil has been there since the last ice age. And so the standard explanation that they try to give us is that the seeds in that weed pile have been there since the ice age. And suddenly, we bring them up to the surface and they all sprout and hop and away we go. Well, hate to break it to you, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because we know that seeds don't remain viable in the soil for hundreds of years or thousands of years. So if the seeds weren't in the ground, where'd they come from? Well, the next explanation is, of course, that there were animals that came in and they dropped the seeds there with their droppings or whatever. Or maybe the birds came by and they flew over and they dropped the seeds. Well, think about it. You look at that weed that's growing there in that weed pile, and you understand a little about the weed. And in our area, a lot of those weeds are what we call velvet leaf. And that velvet leaf produces the seeds in the fall. And so the standard explanation would be that somehow the animals or the birds, gathered up these seeds and simply managed to come out in the spring and scatter them after the excavation. So they were hanging on to these seeds. So the birds were constipated all winter. That doesn't make sense. And as for the weeds being scattered by the wind, If it's a large seed, it didn't come in by the wind. The problem is that when you really start looking and seeing what's going on with that mound of dirt that has weeds growing over it, the standard explanations that they would have us believe simply don't make sense. That's what it means to start seeing what you're looking at. Another example. So I've got old farm tractors, and in the vintage farm tractors that I have, the cabs on the tractors were more notional than anything else. And so I've got one tractor that has almost no windows in the cab, and there's usually a wasp nest up in the one corner. And so as I'm farming with this tractor and I'm going back and forth across the field, I'm watching the wasps coming and going from their little nest. Now, I'm not messing with them and they're not messing with me, and I'm kind of happy with that. So I'm not sticking my finger up there trying to provoke them, but I'm watching them. How does that wasp know where that nest is to come back to? The tractor's moving. It's a yellow tractor. The wind is blowing. Are the wasps telling each other where the wasp nest is? Are they smelling where that wasp nest is? Are they telling each other that the yellow tractor is now on the other side of the field? Or is that wasp nest something else again altogether? Is that wasp nest perhaps some kind of maybe a resonating antenna that the wasps are tuned into? And that's how they're using to communicate. And they're tuning into that wasp nest energy field. See, I spend a lot of time thinking about those things. I spend a lot of time trying to understand what it is that I'm seeing. And it's just like mother's intuition. Our standard society rejects it outright. The scientists tell us it's superstition, yet every culture experiences it. Every culture throughout history talks about it. And we've all experienced it, especially if you're a parent. Whether you're the father and suddenly mom understands, hey, there's something going on with the kids and all the alarm bells go off, or you're the mother. Okay, that's something that's real. That is a connection, energetic connection from the mother, and sometimes the father as well, to those children. Your Newtonian science that you learned in high school doesn't explain it. Standard society would tell you to ignore it. But rather than trying to ignore it or write it off as superstition, it seems to me that it makes better sense to try to think about, okay, how is that connection being made? What is that connection? How can I improve that connection? What is interfering with that connection that is keeping it from being as strong and as pure and as good as it possibly could be? I really want to see what I'm looking at there. Another thing that our scientists dismiss is dowsing. Again, it's found in every culture, throughout history. And certainly there are people that, are fake dowsers. There are those, but you know what? Even if it happened once, that means it's possible. And if it's possible, we can figure out how. And, with dowsing, here in the Midwest, dowsers are the ones that they use to find where to dig the wells. And every homestead had its own well. So when you think about it, if you're going to go dig a well in Pioneer, Iowa, in the 1840s, 1850s, 1860s, that meant that you were going to have to take time off from doing all the other work that you're going to do. You're going to have to gather a bunch of stones so that you can build the wall of the well as you're digging it. And you're going to have to, as you're digging that well, after you get over just a few feet, you're going to have a bucket and some way to get that dirt out of the hole and some place to go with it. So if you're going to be digging a well, It is a major investment in time and labor, and you want to dig it in the right place. So the people that don't believe in dowsing will tell you that, well, that just it's just matter of luck that they would, dig these wells and find water. Well, if that's so, then on most of these old farmsteads throughout the Midwest, you should be able to find wells that they half dug, gave up on, and then dug another one. You don't. When you go through these old homesteads, you find the well that they dug, and they used it for watering the livestock. They used that for water for the household, but they didn't have a bunch of dry holes that they dug. So that tells me that there's something there to dowsing. There's something there that I really need to understand. Scientists laugh at homeopathy. But again, this is another one of those things. When you look at the evidence shows that it works. And in my area, the farmers, typically the commercial farmers, are very skeptical about homeopathy. And I say, okay, well, let's do some math. And I really like to do the math with these guys because, well, they like to think that perhaps I'm a little bit, half a bubble off plum. But I said, okay, so an acre of farmland has about 45,000 square feet. When you put a pint of, let's go with Roundup, um,
Marty, I think you're muted again. Can anybody? Sorry, I can't hear you anymore. Can everybody else hear you? Is it just me?
anybody?
Oh, there you are. Yep, you're
Okay,
back.
I am. Okay, all right. Well, we can resume share. How's that?
Perfect.
Sorry
You're
about that.
talking about Roundup. Yep.
So we're talking about the Roundup. Okay, so it's a pint, and so about 15% of that pint is actual Roundup. And so I do the math and I lay out how many drops of Roundup there are actually in that pint that's getting sprayed over the field. And I say, it looks like there's about one drop every square foot. So you got one drop of chemical over a square foot, and that is what you're getting your weed kill with. Now you tell me that isn't homeopathic. Well, of course it is. We,
Marty, we can't see your screen anymore now.
oh,
There you are.
okay. The, there are some real advantages to living in the middle of nowhere, Iowa. Some of the disadvantages are that I am reliant on technology that sometimes is a little bit iffy. But
It's the same in the heart of the Silicon Valley, I'll tell you.
as when I was growing up, um, my grandmother always did all of the gardening by the sign of the moon. And we were farmers, we were commercial farmers. And so, naturally you know, we kind of poo-pooed that, because she wouldn't plant unless the sign of the moon was just the right one, and she wouldn't weed unless it was the right sign of the moon, and she did all that, and we laughed and we laughed and we gardened like farmers. Okay, and then about halfway through the summer, we're weeding and we're putting on the stuff to kill the bugs, and we're having trouble with this, we're having trouble with that, and grandma's garden is doing just fine. Huh. Maybe we shouldn't have been laughing quite so hard. The scientists also laugh about astrology. And there's a lot of problems with Western astrology, and I'll be the first one to admit that. But when you dig into astrology, especially the Chinese and the Mayan astrology, there is enough evidence in there of correlations that prove themselves time and time and time again that I don't laugh at that stuff anymore. I don't laugh at any of the energy workers when they tell me that they can do something. I used to be real skeptical, and now, you know what? If somebody shows me that they can do something, I try to do it myself. Now, I may not be able to do it as well as they can right out of the basket, but I'm a firm believer that God is not a respecter of persons. And so if somebody can do it, I can learn how to do it myself. I may not be as good as they are, and I may never have the same skill set that they do, but in Iowa State University, C's get degrees. It doesn't have to be perfect to still get good results. Dr. Ellen Kamai, and she is the natural nurse. So if you've been on the different social media networks, and her thing is when you invite her to speak, is she goes out into the parking lot, gathers a bunch of weeds, and then brings them into the lecture hall and tells you what the medicinal value of the weeds are. And she says that every wives' tale she has investigated was rooted in truth. She'll also tell you that if you have a piece of ground that you really love, that the plants that are growing in that ground are growing for you. So if you go out into your front yard and you see a bunch of dandelions growing, maybe you should look and see what a dandelion is good for. And what a dandelion does, it's great for doing liver detox. Yeah, imagine that we would need that in the United States. And it's also a great calcium, a source of calcium. Imagine that. We've got dandelions are taking over lawns in suburbia across America, and Americans are critically short of calcium, and many of them have very toxic livers. Huh. Maybe I need to be paying more attention to those weeds that are growing out in the front yard. See, the problem is that the science that we were taught is incomplete and it was out of date. So when we were taught all about Newton and the work that he was doing, remember that Europeans were still burning witches when Newton was doing his work. And the science you learned in high school was based on Newton. We've learned a lot since then. You know what? It's been over 200 years since they did the double slit experiment. And the double slit experiment, which comes back again and again, and we'll touch on it again, is where light shows itself as both a particle and a wave, depending upon what the observer wants to measure. It's been almost 100 years since they found that when two electrons touch, they become entangled. So what happens to one electron as you change the rotation or the orientation of one electron, it automatically changes the rotation or orientation of the other electron, no matter how far away those two are. 120 years since they discovered that matter and energy are the same thing. And almost 100 years ago since they discovered that the observer always has an effect upon the experiment. Well, think about that, especially if you're wondering about those skeptics and they're looking at your work and you're wondering, oh my gosh, when I try to show it and there's a skeptic there, it doesn't work as well. Well, that's because of the observer effect. Their energy field actually acts to suppress the work that you're doing. Or it can, unless you have ways to overcome it, and we do. Now, what I want you to do is think about things that you have experienced but probably didn't pay any attention to. And this is talking about collapsing the wave of the probabilities. And what quantum science tells us is that all things are possible until we attach consciousness to it. And then when we apply consciousness to it, it collapses all those probabilities into one reality. And I think we've all seen that where we're driving on the road, we stop, we glance both ways, and we pull out. Or we pull up to that stop sign, we look both ways, and as soon as we look, something changes, and you can feel that change. It's almost a click, and you feel that change. And what you've done is you just felt the collapse of the realities. You felt the collapse of those probabilities. And it's just like in radionic work, what we found is that the more often we analyze our progress, the faster the progress is. So when we apply consciousness to it, things change. And we've seen it in our culture. How many of us have been involved in the different multi-level marketing things where they have the you put up the dream board and you have the pictures of all the things that you want to do when you become the grand galactic commander of the multi-level marketing thing of the week. Well, what they're doing is they are changing the energetic pattern. They are providing a fixed point to collapse the probabilities into those fixed patterns that you have pictured on that dream board. So yes, dream boards work, and you don't even have to be an Amway to do it. So as I get more into my work, what I've found is that I'm spending a lot more time, working with people and helping them on their healing journey. And with the healing journey, my perspective is a little bit different than many others. For me, the body is a symptom of what's going on in the energetic field. It is the body is the result or the output, if you will. And it is all the energy and is all those energy patterns that result in the body. And for me, what I'm seeing is healing doesn't happen unless there's a change. And that change must include a change in perspective. So I've got a friend of mine that is probably one of the most talented hands-on healers that I have ever met. And before his tragic airplane crash that really uh, set him back, his specialty was doing hands-on healing with broken bones. Now, with this fellow, he was not doing the hands-on healing with broken bones because he is a great and wonderful person. He is one of those adrenaline addicts that likes to go out with the high-powered four-wheelers and the high-powered snowmobiles and all the other thing. And he had a small group of friends that were just as crazy as he was. And when they'd have an accident, he would heal them so they could go back to playing. I have seen him do the hands-on healing. And what he told me, which has stuck with me for many years now, he says that right before you do the hands-on healing, you need to crack their reality. Says what you need to do, he says what he normally does is he'll just whisper in their ear about the pink flying elephant. And he says the second that their mind moves away from where they currently are or where they currently think they are, says that gives you an opportunity to make whatever changes need to be made. Said he had to crack their reality. I had another gentleman that was a breath uh, practitioner, and he told me one day that he was out mowing his yard, and this goes back to the idea that it is our perspective that locks in reality. And he says that his foot slipped underneath the mower, and the mower died. And he says that he knew that as bad as it hurt, that it was going to be pretty terrible when he pulled his foot out. And so what he did is he put his entire concentration into that pain of his foot. And as soon as the pain started to go away, he pulls his foot out from underneath the mower. And he says when he pulled his foot out, the shoe was ruined and there were some scratches on his ankle, but everything else was fine. And he told me that story, and my first reaction was, no way. Ain't gonna happen. I've been on the farm way too long. I know what happens when you take metal things and you mix them with fleshy things. But then I had the opportunity to test that theory. And what I done is I was I was doing some very stupid things, trying to be in a hurry, and I dropped a piece of equipment onto my foot. And when I took my boot off to look at the foot, all the toes were pointed in different directions, and they were purple, and it was really ugly. But I didn't show the foot to anybody else. I just put my sock back on, and we headed to the emergency room, which is about an hour and a half away. And in that hour and a half, I had the time to remember what John Royal had taught me, and so I did what he told me to do. Now, where I messed up, first mess up, was that I looked at it before I started working on it. And so I'd already started to bring that possibility into reality. But when I got to the emergency room, I had decided that all I had was just a broken toe. When they took the x-rays, they told me all I had was a broken toe. But they said that the problem was that the end of the break was so close to the end of one of the bones that I would need to see a surgeon that following Monday and have the foot pinned. And so I had another 3 days to concentrate on what I wanted that injury to be. And my idea was that break in the bone was in the middle of the metatarsal, and that it would be, it would heal on its own. And when they took the x-rays again on Monday, the break was in the middle of the toe. The surgeon said there was really no reason for her to do anything. They gave me a walking boot, and I was on my way out. And so that taught me two lessons. One, when I'm hurt, start working on it before I look at it. And number two, make sure that my ask is big enough. Make sure that I have faith that I can have the outcome that I wanted. I settled for a broken toe. I could just as easily have settled for a bruised foot. I've used that several times. Now, the other thing is that when healing happens, it is always instant. And you go, oh, come on, Marty, you are full of it. I know that when I cut my thumb, it took this week, and when I did this, it took, yes, because that's what you expect. You expect it to take a certain amount of time, and it takes time. Think about when you were a little kid. When you were a little kid and you got hurt, it healed very, very quickly. But now that you're a grown up, you know, quote unquote, that things don't heal that quickly, so it takes longer. But I want to offer you a short explanation about, just how much we control our own healing. And this is much more fun in face to face than it is over Zoom, but it works exactly the same way. And hopefully many of you are energy workers, or you've done a little bit of energy work or a little bit of visualization work. You don't have to have any of those skills. All you have to do is just suspend your skepticism for just a minute, and let's roll with it. Let's suppose that you have some sort of a health issue or concern that you're worried about, whatever it is. So I want you to bring that in mind. Now, anything that is happening in your body, that pattern is stored somewhere. Not only is the pattern stored somewhere, but the cause of that pattern is stored somewhere as well. So what I want you to do is put both hands out in front of you and hold them. And I want you to look into those hands, and I want you to visualize what the cause of that health challenge looks like. And just whatever comes to mind, comes to mind. I want you to, what color is it? What shape is it? Is it warm? Is it cool? Does it have an odor? Does it move? And as soon as you've got a visualization of what that thing looks like, I want you to identify where in or around your body that shape is. Now I want you to take that shape that you're holding in your hands, and I want you to turn it into a newborn baby's teddy bear. And it's got the furry little ears and the little glass eyes, and it kind of smells like baby puke. And there you've got that teddy bear in your hands. Now take that teddy bear, and I want you to physically put it right wherever that other thing was. And just go ahead and stick it right in there. So here's what you just did. Every time the universe blinks, your consciousness reestablishes your body. And what it does is it uses the pattern that you had at the last blink, makes any changes that your consciousness made, and then broadcasts the new body. Okay. And this happens so many millions of times per second. And so when you asked for the shape of that cause, you were asking for the lack of a better way to put it, the computer address of where that memory was stored. And then when you changed it into the teddy bear, you changed the address. So here is what you'll notice over the next maybe few hours, few days, or a week. Something will change. It will be different. It may have gone away completely. It may have only changed 50%, or you may have only noticed just some minor changes in the symptoms. But any change means that you have the ability to change it. And if you can change it a little, you can change it a little more. And you can change it a little more. And you can do this exercise for as many times as you want to. So I was at a farm meeting in Northwest Iowa, and a gentleman comes over to me, and Dan was wearing one of those um, insulin pumps. And he told me that he was a type whatever diabetic, and he asked if this would do for that. And I said, look, I don't know. I all I know is that this seems to work for some people, and it may work for you. And I led him through the exercise. And when we got done, he says, I can't say is that it changed anything. And I says, you know what? Maybe it didn't. A couple hours later, he comes over to me and he pulls off his glucose monitor and he shows it to me and says, Marty, you've got to see this. And I said, I have no idea what I'm looking at. He says, no, I just had breakfast. And I had the pancakes and the syrup, and I had the fruit, and I had the orange juice, and I had the potatoes with the sausage gravy. And he says, and my blood sugar didn't change. And I said, well, I was over 100 miles away from home, which automatically makes me an expert. And so what I told him was, well, of course. And in my heart of hearts, I'm going, really? So a year later, Dan comes by and he says, Marty, I want you to know that what you told me worked for almost 10 months. And then I forgot what it was that you showed me. And I says, Dan, it wasn't that you forgot. It was that you remembered. Remember all those stories of the people that have the multiple personalities, and the one personality has to wear glasses, and the other personality has a limp, and the one personality has the high blood pressure, and the other personality has whatever they are? Huh. What if every one of those health issues that you're dealing with is something that you manufactured? And if you manufactured it, maybe you're the one that can unmanufacture it. Yeah, we take these anomalies, we take these stories, and we put them off in a file by themselves, and we try not to look at them, because if we looked at it and we really understood what we were seeing, it would really hurt our feelings that we are accepting things the way they are. And of course, there are frauds in this business. But here's the thing. If it was happened 1,000 times and 990 of them were frauds, but only 10 of them were actual, that means it's possible. Just like the breatharians, and we've all heard about the people that survive without eating. And Raymond Grace has a friend that is a breatharian, and we've studied it, and we've seen people, and you look in in the archives of the Catholic Church, and there are people that are breatharians, and it's well documented. And you go back through history again and again and again. Okay, if even one of those things is true, that means it's possible. So rather than discounting it and throwing it away, maybe we should be looking at it a little closer. And for those of you that are dowsers, here's a question for you. I want you to douse it. How much of your nutrition are you currently bringing in directly from the ether? And if the answer is anything other than zero, that means that you're able to do something. Excuse me, I have somebody at the door. Could you hold on a minute? I'm on a Zoom call. Sorry about that. See, one of the other things we need to look at is that as we're looking at things, are we looking at a cause or an effect? And if we're not addressing the cause, is it really worth your time to be worrying about all of the symptoms? They say that a headache is not a symptom of a aspirin deficiency. Well, if all we're doing is treating the symptoms, then maybe we should start looking at the cause. How much of your life is a cause and how much of it is a symptom? You start looking at it and go, you know what? I wonder. And it's that wondering and that asking. And as dowsers, we all know that the issue isn't the answer. The answer is a piece of cake. The answer is easy. It's the question that is the issue. The questions are the most difficult things, because if you have a question, you can always come up with an answer. Okay. Please excuse me while I take care of the dogs. I'll be back in just a second. I am sorry.
I think that happens to a lot of us when we've been around the Zoom calls. I don't know if whenever I'm dog sitting, my dog wants to come and be here and be part of this. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead. Geraldine, I'll have him repeat that nutrition question. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. You can type them in the Q&A, or you could raise your hand and I'll unmute you as well. So
Sorry about that. Got some folks that are doing some mushroom hunting right before a thunderstorm. And yeah.
Marty, Geraldine wants to know if you could repeat the nutrition question and give an example, like what percentage of your nutrition
just what percentage of your nutrition are you currently bringing in directly from the ether? So the reason that I'm asking that is that if a breatharian can live entirely without eating, then how much of it can we do just on our own? And if you got somebody that's got a compromised digestive system, how about we try to figure out how the breatharians do that and how can we maximize it for ourselves? And so as you're dowsing, and you may find that you're currently bringing in, and in my work, it seems like that people are typically bringing in between 10 and 15% of their nutrition naturally, directly from the ether, directly from the air, if you will. So one of the things that we know about how nature works is that your body always takes care of the most important things first. So if you are bringing in a certain percentage of your nutrition directly from the air, is it going to be bringing in the stuff you don't need, or is it going to be bringing in the stuff that you need the most? So maybe our diet, the physical part that we eat, is not as critical as we have been taught. Maybe when we ask for the blessing over the food, it's more important than we have been taught. And for those of you that have been brought in a tradition where you do ask for the blessing over your food, in radionics we can measure the changes of the nutrients in the food when you do that. Think about that. Saying a prayer over your food can change your food. Yep. Sometimes a bunch of us get together and we like to do stupid human tricks. And one of the stupid human tricks that we've really like to do. Now, I don't know anybody that can change water into wine, but I know several people that can change poor wine into good wine. And just for fun, at many of the dinners, we'll take the coffee that's served and we'll go ahead and pray over the coffee, if you will, and change the flavor of the coffee. You can change the flavor of the coffee. You can change the flavor of uh, of the water. You can even change the flavor of the beer if you like. And once you've done it, then you realize that, wait a minute, I'm a lot more powerful than anybody's ever taught me that I am. I can do a lot more than people have led on to believe. And if I can make that coffee that they're serving at the gas station have a little bit more of a nut flavor, a little bit less of that burned flavor, what else can I change? How powerful am I? You're much more powerful than you've been taught. And not only that, as we're going through this, the there we go. Um, that even their concepts of time, are not what we've been taught they are. They just did an experiment in Austria where they found that the order of things that we experience is not fixed, and that many different realities can exist at the same time. The thing is, you've all experienced it, but you may not have noticed. You may not have paid attention to it. How many times have you been in a dream and there was some noise outside that happened? Maybe it was a car backfiring or a door slamming or whatever, and it just fit perfectly into your dream. And because it fit so well in, you didn't even wake up. Well, think about it. If you were dreaming about whatever, and suddenly, that outside noise, that backfiring car, was able to fit directly into the dream that you were dreaming, that would mean that time as you experience it in a dream is not the same. That means for whatever reason that whole scenario that you were dreaming seems to be built around that one incident of that car backfiring. Think about that. It's just kind of weird. It's really, really powerful. Maybe time isn't something that we really have a good grip on. And come to think of it, you know, time really is something that we don't have a particular grip on. And there's two instances where we have proven that people can control time. One of them is baseball batters. A baseball batter will tell you, the very best ones, that as they're sitting there, that they will simply slow things down so that they can be able to hit the ball. Because when the scientists and the biologists were studying, they said that there's no way that the nerve system can process the information of where that ball is coming in time for them to swing and hit it. But the baseball player says, well, he simply slows things down and he's able to hit the ball. Martial arts people are taught to slow time down so that they can, do their fighting. Well, God is not a respecter of persons. If we can slow things down, why don't we figure out how to do that? And we've all experienced it as well. How many times have you had an emergency? And as you're in the middle of that emergency, time seems to slow completely down. And everything happens very, very slowly. Maybe it was a car accident. Maybe it was a tree falling. Maybe it was some other kind of a thing. But as it was happening, it seemed to happen very, very slowly. Well, if you can do it unintentionally, You should be able to do it intentionally. And I believe that part of that time manipulation has to do with us applying additional concentration, additional consciousness into that moment, into that now. So have we gotten weird enough yet? Well, if not, let's go a little deeper. So if the body, if we are a thought form of creator, then the body is the form, then what is that thought? Where does that thought come from? How can we make that thought better? We've already played around with that a little bit with the teddy bear experiment. What else can we do with that thought? I think part of all of this is that we get into a rut. We get into a basically it's an addiction pattern where, okay, this is who we are, this is who I expect to be, and this is what I expect to happen. And then we just run with it because it's very, very easy. It takes very little energy to be the same person that you were yesterday, to be that person today. It takes a lot more concentration, a lot more energy to try to be different, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, or whatever. But if we are the creators of this reality and we're in charge of that thought, or at least partially in charge of that thought, what changes do you want to make to that? Many years ago, I was just on the verge of retiring from the military. I'd spent the last part of my uh, service in the reserves. In fact, most of my service was in the reserves, and I got mobilized and sent to Bosnia. And I was right on the border of Bosnia and Croatia. And a general that didn't know me pulled me out of a lineup, and he sent me to do a mission that he really wasn't thinking about too hard, and I wasn't thinking about too hard either. So when I showed up at this staging area, nobody knew me. Nobody knew what I was capable of. Nobody knew what I didn't know. Nobody even knew what authority I had or I didn't have. And so I had the opportunity to invent myself. I had the opportunity to simply be who I needed to be to get this particular mission done, because nobody was there to stop me from being that. Nobody was there that knew any difference. And there was nobody there that knew I didn't have a clue what I was really doing. And because I was able to reinvent myself, I was able to do some absolutely amazing things. And I think about that often, even though it's been, oh my gosh, it's been over 30 years ago. I still think about that often. You know, how do I want to invent myself today? What changes do I want to make? How do I want to be better? What differences do I want to make in the world? What are the things that I want to do? See, we're all one. Spiritual masters teach us that we're all one. Quantum scientists tell us that we are living in a hologram of light controlled by consciousness, and in a hologram, everything is connected. So again, we're all one. The spiritual masters teach us that if we want to find the truth, we need to go inside. And since all the information in a hologram is contained in every part, they're really saying that same thing. So it isn't that I want to do unto others because I'm such a great person. I want to do unto others because I'm actually doing unto myself. In my world, things don't happen to me, they happen through me and for me. Now, that doesn't mean that bad things don't happen, because they certainly do. But when things happen that I don't think are to my highest good, I don't immediately judge it. I step back and I think, okay, what's in this for me? Why is this happening? What lesson am I supposed to be teaching? What lesson am I supposed to be learning? So I was coming back from a USPA conference some years ago, and I was about 5 hours from home. And I figured rather than stay overnight and at the hotel and and enjoy camaraderie with everybody, I would just get in the van and I would head home. Well, as soon as I got in the van, a radiator hose broke, and I was stranded right outside of O'Hare Airport on a Sunday night. And so I'm out of state, I'm out of town, and come Monday morning, I had to call the tow truck to be towed to the dealership, and I'm waiting in the lounge area for them to do whatever they needed to do to get my van back on the road. And I could have faced that as, okay, this is going to be a lot of money. It's really inconvenient. I could be at home. I could have just done the yada, 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 poor me, or I could say, you know what, whatever's happening, let's find out what's going on. And about that time, Frank comes in. Frank is wearing a Vietnam veteran's hat. And so Frank and I start visiting. And Frank shared with me some of the most amazing spiritual stories that he had experienced his entire life, going all the way back from Vietnam, through his time working at the O'Hare Airport. And so that 4 hours turned into one of the greatest blessings that I'd had in years. Now, was that blessing there because it was supposed to be there? Was it there simply because I noticed it? How many times are those coincidences and those synchronicities happening, but you're not noticing, you're not paying attention, you're not taking advantage? I wonder. See, the only thing that's keeping us from really understanding how connected we are the blocks. And that's primarily what a lot of my work is. I do very little work, trying to balance all the physical stuff. I work in the energetic field. I work trying to find out what are those blocks? How do I remove those blocks? How do I get that energy moving? How do I get that energy flowing? And one of the first things that I do as I'm broadcasting is I broadcast a frequency pattern that I call trust in God. Not because I am a Bible beater. I am not. Not because I am religious. I am not. I consider myself to be spiritual, but certainly not religious. But having trust in Creator opens up your energy field so that you can allow changes. Another one of the most powerful frequencies that you can do to balance with. And again, that's what the preacher's been telling us. It's gratitude. Gratitude, what it does is it allows you to receive. And the reason I bring that up is that, many of the lessons that we have been exposed to, the people that are showing these lessons really don't understand what they're showing us, and they don't present it in a way that we can really understand. But the preachers have been telling us that we're in charge, but I don't think they ever really believed it. The preachers tell us that, to pray and have faith in the power of prayer. But you know what? If they really knew how to properly structure a prayer, their prayers would get answered every time. I expect my prayers to be answered, not because I'm a good person, not because I'm particularly anything. I expect my prayers to be answered because scientifically, when you build them properly and energize them properly, the universe responds. When somebody comes to me that has an issue, I expect to be able to find what the cause of that issue is and resolve it. And when I expect things to happen, they just happen. And part of the reason is that I have spent a lot of time trying to be aligned with why I'm here and who I am. And you go, well, gosh, how do you find that out? Well, it turns out, and this comes from some of the work of Gail West, your heart's desire is why you're here. Your soul's desire is who you are. And when you bring those two together, the universe steps in to make your world work for you. So, in my view, if I am doing what I am supposed to be doing here, if I am aligned with who I am and why I'm here, then I expect the universe to respond. I expect the universe to help me get that done. So, in my view, and this may seem arrogant to some of you, it may seem just a little weird to others. I believe that if there was anybody else on this planet that could be Marty Lucas better than Marty Lucas, they would be doing it and I'd be doing something else. That means that I have a mission to do. And because I am aligned with who I am and why I'm here, I have a passion towards that mission. So I'm not surrendering to anything, no more than I would be surrendering to a banana split. It is simply being who I am. And I am driven to do that. And by doing that, I expect help to get where I need to go. The story that I like to use is that if I hired a janitor to sweep the floors of the school, the janitor is not going to get down on his knees in the middle of the hall and pray for brooms and mops. The janitor is going to go over to the supply cabinet. He's going to open up the supply cabinet. And if he doesn't have everything he needs there, he's going to get a hold of management. And management is going to have to get him what he needs so he can do his job. I want you to think about that for you. If you are doing what you're supposed to be doing on this planet, if you're aligned with who you are, why you're here, and you're accomplishing your soul mission, then frankly, the universe has some skin in the game to make you successful. And so you can expect the help that you need. And so when things happen around you, you can simply expect to get the resources you need. If I need someone in my life to give me an answer, they show up. If I'm not supposed to have that answer, somebody else will take it over for me. That's just kind of how it works. Now I'm gonna finish with one story and then we'll open it up for questions and comments. Scientists have been telling us that when they are measuring a light source from a distant galaxy, that if they set their equipment up to measure it as particles, they'll be able to measure it as particles. If they set it to measure as waves, they'll be able to measure it as waves. And so their initial theory was that that photon had to, quote unquote, decide whether it was going to be a particle or a wave, however many tens of hundreds or millions of years ago when it was produced. And so they're trying to figure out, are photons time travelers? The physicists really had a hard time with that theory and they didn't like it. The theory that they like better, which I think is even more cool, is this one. They say that every photon takes every path to every destination every time. And that depends upon your perspective, what portion of that photon or what path of that photon you will see, which means your perspective is what determines your reality. And so if you want to change your reality, even if it's something as minor as a piece of machinery that you dropped on your foot, or it's something financial, or it's something whatever, if you want to change your reality, you need to change your perspective. Our spiritual teachers have been teaching that for thousands of years. And only now our scientists have come up with a way to explain it. How cool is that? All right. Well, I have talked for, oh my gosh, almost an hour. And for those that know me, you understand that I really enjoy talking. And so at this point, what I would love to do, if you've got some questions, um, I would love to be able to answer them. And let's see, it looks like that there's some stuff in the chat room.
Yeah, so while people are typing, if they're typing, and if you want to ask a question, raise your hand and speak to Marty directly, go ahead and do that. I want to go back I have a couple of questions. Um, I can't remember who you were quoting that said, if you have property and you have a garden, those plants in your field are growing for you.
Mhm.
Say more about that.
Yeah, well, and this is something that the uh, Dr. Ellen Kamai touches on, but the leading agronomists have been talking about it for a long time. They've been able to measure that when a cow is grazing in the field, the chemical makeup in the grass will change based upon what the cow's nutritional needs are. And so if you have plants that are growing in your environment, rather than looking them at weeds, go ahead and Google them and see what they are telling you. Dandelions, for instance, I use that. It's an easy one because
Okay.
it's we think of it as a calcium weed. It grows when there's a shortage of available calcium, but it's also a liver detox. The Native Americans said that plantain was white men's footsteps because whenever white men came through, there was plantain. Plantain is a phenomenal weed, if you will, for treating minor scrapes and burns and things on your skin. And so all of those plants out there are growing for a reason. And as we're thinking about that connection, let's not forget that our pets are very much in that same environment. And what veterinarians that have been around the business for a long time will tell you is that if a beloved pet has a particular health issue, look at the owner because the pet often takes on those issues for the owner. So if Fluffy dies of cancer, Fluffy's owner will likely show up with cancer shortly after Fluffy dies. And they've documented it over and over and over again. So you think about that. So as you're looking at your dog and going, huh, well, my dog's kind of fat. Holy mackerel.
Wow,
But again,
what does that say though about like what, the about the environment responding to you? Um, what's the mechanism of the environment scanning you and showing up as a reflection of you?
the thing is, we think that we are separate.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are not. We are not. I mean, when you go out and I don't know, maybe you've worked with labyrinths, maybe you do the tree hugging, or you just go out and meditate. But when you meditate and make that connection to the ground, make that connection to the area, you know how good it feels?
Mm.
It feels good because you've let go of a whole bunch of those blockages. And how many people do we know that routinely talk to the earth spirits and and all the rest of that? And I swear, I used to laugh at them. I don't laugh
That was
anymore.
going to be my next question about your was it your mother, your grandmother planting by the moon?
Yep.
And there's a partnership in that, right? That I think is that we've lost. And for me personally, I kind of yearn for that. I love to hear stories of people communicating with nature spirits and um, um, their environments and non-human intelligence. I think honestly that's the way forward for humanity because we've separated ourselves out from the natural world and from the divine and from each other. And as we reconnect, solutions will appear because we'll be in partnership. That's what keeps me going and what gets me up in the morning.
Well, and you start looking around, and the people that are the most unhappy are the ones that are the most disconnected. Yeah. The people that are the happiest are the ones that are the most connected. And that doesn't necessarily mean, the most social and the rest of that, the ones that have that actual connection. So like for me, I am absolutely perfectly happy to be out here in the middle of my little farm, briggling around doing stuff, and watching the critters and whatever, because I've got a connection to this place.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that you will notice that when you make that connection to a place, and not only does your frequency rise, the frequency of that place rises as well. And the higher the frequency of your place, the more the severe weather and the storms go around.
Wow. I have seen that happen. But I mean, like, well, I'll just tell you this little story. I was up in Canada and I was taking my son and daughter-in-law to see the Tulip Festival last year or year before. Um, Somewhere outside of Abbotsford, and it was raining. It was kind of gloomy. It was a really kind of wet day. And as we're driving, I kind of decided to just contact the nature spirits of that farm, of the tulips, and just ask politely if we could have some nice weather just for the time that we were there. And part of me thought, oh, that's really it's just really cheeky to ask for our outing to be nice. But I swear to God, we got there, and in the whole valley, right where we were, where the tulips were, it was sunny and beautiful. That was, the ground was wet, but it was sunny and beautiful, and there were rain clouds all around the perimeter. It was just this one sunny island right at the tulip farm, and I I made sure that I told my son that I had contacted the nature spirits and asked them for that. And he rolled his eyes so hard I thought they were going to come out of his head. But you know, it happened. So,
And here's the thing. Let's say it was just a coincidence. Okay. All right. You lost nothing.
right.
But if it wasn't a coincidence, holy buckets.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing over and over again is that, if it happens once, okay, my logical left brain will go, okay, well, but when it happens over and over and over and over again, then you go, you know what, this is not a coincidence. I really think that when we get rid of those blockages, that this place is really supposed to be a paradise.
I think so.
And you watch those Disney movies where you've got the Disney princess and all the little critters are coming and doing whatever. I think that is a cultural memory of how things are supposed to be.
Totally agree with you. And I got the message that the nature spirits are delighted to answer requests. If it's reasonable and within their power, they're like, sure, we'll do that for you. That they like to be in partnership, they like to be acknowledged, and it's part of the fun.
Yeah. Andre Biesinger, he has lived with angels his entire life. His mother, could see him, he can see him. Um, and after one particular experience, he asked this angel that had come down, and he says, "Now this is a 9-foot angel with the wings and the whole schmear." He says, "Now this is, I mean, very." He says, "Why do you do this for us?" And the angel says, "Because we need your love energy to be able to be in this realm. And so by helping you, you are giving us the love energy, which helps us to be in this realm to do our work."
I love that.
Works for me.
Yeah, works for me.
Works.
I love that. Karen has a question about being overweight. For example, if is the body not aligned with the soul's functions? We've talked about this before. Can alignment, soul, chakra, and body change that pattern? Do you think that that's a symptom of disalignment with purpose?
Yes, 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 and yes.
Okay.
Now I'm gonna throw this out here. Most of the two strongest uh, drives in humanity is reproduction and eating. Okay. And so if you're hungry, it's because your body says it's hungry. It needs something for whatever reason. When your body has a toxin, it cannot properly expel. It surrounds it in fat and it hides it in fat. And that protects that poison from damaging any of the organs. And so if you are toxic, your body will actually make you tired as it's manufacturing fat to hide that toxin. Okay. So here's something that's really cool. Not only can we draw uh, our nutrition directly from the ether, but the biology in our system is able to transmute minerals. Comes out of agriculture. In agriculture, they did a study here many, many years ago, and they repeated it hundreds of times. So if you have a chicken and you are measuring all the calcium that goes into the chicken, and you measure the calcium that's going into the egg, what you find is that there's more calcium coming out of the chicken than's going in. And so what they did was they reduced the amount of calcium going into the chicken to see what was the minimum amount of calcium they could put in that chicken and still get eggs. And they continued to get eggs, even though they'd almost, eliminated the calcium. But when they eliminated the silica from the chicken's diet, then the chicken was no longer able to produce eggs. The biology in the chicken digestion is transmuting. It is elementally changing silica into calcium. Earthworms do the same thing. So if you think about this, if the biology in a chicken's gut, and a chicken is what, 90 days old, 120 days old, is able to convert silica into calcium, why wouldn't the biology in our own system be much more advanced and much more capable? And so for those that like to do energy work, and you want to do this on your own, and you're, I do it radionically, but one thing to do is, okay, how do I go about getting my biology in my system to transmute those heavy metals, to transmute those toxins? For instance, you know, throughout the years, I've had a lot of dental work done, some of it professionally. And we all know the issues with mercury in the old dental fillings. And every one of us has been, oh, if you go to this dentist, they'll take out all your mercury fillings and they're going to replace them with whatever. I didn't enjoy them drilling on it the first time. It's currently not hurting. I am not going to have them drill on it again. But I want to be able to take care of that mercury that's being leached into my system. So the idea is simply to teach the biology in my system to transmute the mercury, or transmute the glyphosate, or transmute whatever the heavy metal is. See, and now that you have that idea, you can figure out how to get there from here, because it's possible.
So going back to the overweight issue,
Yeah.
she asks alignment of soul, chakra, and body. If the closer the alignment,
Mhm.
right,
Absolutely.
to your soul's, she said soul's functions, but soul's,
Yeah, your soul mission, whatever that soul mission is. So the closer that you are aligned. And so, for instance, I simply assume that if I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing on this planet, the universe is going to take care of all the details for me and make sure that I am healthy enough to do whatever I'm supposed to do until I'm done with my mission. And so I will be hungry for those things that my body needs. I won't be hungry for those things that my body doesn't. And for the stuff that, doesn't make any difference, it's just going to go on. And so I really, just like the employee, I leave it up to management to take care of that stuff. I'm going to do my job as best as I can. Management, you take care of anything that's getting in my way. Karen, I wonder if my holding in the body overrides soul information. You can make that connection anytime you want to. And 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 certainly I do it with my instrumentation, but you can do it with your meditation. Those things that you are passionate about are probably close to your soul mission. So if it's something that you've always wanted to do, that may be something that you are supposed to do. We have been taught not to follow our soul mission. We've been taught not to follow our dreams because we need to be responsible citizens. We need to be the good husband, the good wife, the good, whatever, the good employee. And so we spent most of our adult years, or at least I have, not doing what I really wanted to do, not doing what I was really supposed to do. But in our heart of hearts, we knew it wasn't us. I knew deep and down inside as a military officer that though I was good at it, that's not who I was. And I knew that at some point somebody was going to figure it out. Somebody was going to figure out that one, I really don't enjoy it that much, and two, I really don't like these people that well. And so I spent a lot of time with that facade. How many people do we know have spent their entire career at some business and they're just desperately waiting for that vacation or for that retirement so that then they can do what they want to do. And then when they finally get to that point, they have no idea what it is they want to do because not they haven't done it for 50, 60 years. And so they have forgotten, what they were really passionate about. Uh,
Geraldine said you mentioned the Mayan calendar. I'm enthralled by the idea of the frequencies in each glyph. Can you talk about how you use the information in your work, like finding purpose?
oh, absolutely. So you're right. A glyph has a certain energy pattern with it. And so that. Here in Western civilization, when you pick up the cross, it has a certain energy with it. Uh, when you pick up the Star of David, it has a certain energy with it. And if you've done any of the Reiki work, you know that each one of those glyphs has energy with it. The Mayans knew all that and more. And so you have all of that energy. And if you're not a dowser, I recommend that you learn to become a dowser. And don't use it as a party trick. Use it as part of just everyday life. What dowsing allows you to do is tap into that 99.99% of the information that your logical left brain can't lock into. So it can give you answers that your logical left brain can't find. And so what I do to find that purpose is I pay attention to those things I am passionate about. I pay attention to those things that I really want to do. And when I look at something that I really don't want to do, I go, is this who I want to be? I, I, I spent, like I said, I spent a career in the military. I never dreamed that I would be living out here on the farm with a radionics practice where I'm rubbing shoulders with leading energy and alternative healers from the Western world. That was so far from my reality, it would never have gotten there. And even my brothers think that, oh my gosh, that's way too crazy. Okay, it may be crazy for them, and that's just fine. It is who I want to be.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And
Um,
go ahead.
so speaking of that, I'm wondering if I assume you work with people, if people are interested in oh, someone wants to know what's the radionics device behind you and how do you conduct a session? So I was gonna, if people want to work with you, how do they get in touch with you? What kind of things do people generally work on with you?
They I work, I used to do a lot more agriculture. I'm not doing hardly any agriculture anymore. It's almost all with people. And I have no medical experience. I have no medical degrees. The only license I have is to drive a car, and I have to wear glasses for that. Okay, with the disclaimers out of the way. Yes, that is a radionics device behind me. And I do most of my work is with people. And the majority of them come to me, um, unfortunately, when they haven't found answers elsewhere. And that would include severe chronic conditions that sometimes are measured in stages. If you have a chronic health condition, whatever it is, there is always an energetic root to that. There is always a reason that your immune system is not handling it. And so I work to find those blockages and remove those blockages. That doesn't mean that you give up on whatever you're currently doing. And so, if you're whatever medical treatments you're currently doing, I want you to stay with them. Whatever, your diet, exercise plan, the rest of that, I can certainly offer you some suggestions, but I work on the energy end. And my approach is to get your energetic foundation where it needs to be so that your body can heal. In some people, that takes a couple months. Some people, maybe 6 or 8 months. And I've got some people that have been with me for a number of years, not because they continue to get better and better, but because they don't ever want to go back to where they were before. Uh,
Right.
and it absolutely works. Am I able to reverse aging yet? Evidently not.
It's coming. It's coming. We're
Coming.
working
It's
on it,
coming. It's coming.
right? So your website is radionics.us.
Yes. And
I'll put it in the chat. Is it www?
yep, www.radionics.us. And my email is marty@radionics.us. Uh, and I'm also on the Facebook at Every Advantage. Um, and I mean, feel free to reach out. Uh, I I do this, full time. It is my passion, and helping people is an absolute hoot for me. Uh, and uh, uh, and I think I've got 5 or 6 pets in the lab right now too. So there's some pets involved too. But people and pets.
People and pets, and you're aligned with your purpose, clearly.
I I'm doing what I love to do.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with us this evening, for sharing this. It's it just gives me life to hear this stuff. This is, how you said, the kind of Disney princess thing is in memory of how things should be.
Mhm.
I just, when we're talking about stuff like this, I'm like, this is how things should be. These are the conversations we should be having, about with this holistic approach to ourselves and our world on energetic terms. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you everyone for joining us. And until next time, be well. And